The water washed away from Vida and her senses began to return. She was in a dank, dark hole. The ground was wet and hard, gently rocking beneath her. The ceiling rustled above her. It was a piece of thick canvas stirred by the wind. Other things were stirring in the darkness. She could hear slithers, dragging sounds. "Who's there?" she whispered. "Where the hell am I?"
"I believe this was once the Ascendant's storeroom."
That was Crayshaw's voice.
"You are in a part of the aft section, towed here by the tug."
He chuckled softly.
"Crayshaw would think of it as a Trojan horse. He had an appreciation of the classics."
"You creatures were hiding inside the Ascendant," she realised. "Used it to get yourselves brought here."
"Humans enjoy puzzles. They have such inquiring little minds."
"What are you? Where are you from?"
"We have no name. Our history is irrelevant. We live and we spread. We are of the water hive."
"So you dismantled the Ascendant underwater just to intrigue us?" She nodded, reasoning it out. "I suppose Commodore Powers knew it would be coming your way. He's your advanced scout, right? Ensuring that the pieces of the ship would be taken straight here to a key naval establishment, a secret stronghold, and then you could use that secrecy against us." A deeper chill sounded in his voice.
"Your intelligence is sound, Miss Swan."
"Are you after the filament tracers on board the Ascendant?" He didn't answer her. "Have they been poisoning your seawater, or do you plan to use them against us somehow?"
"We can manipulate all moisture as we choose. Your technology means nothing to us."
"Without it, we would never have learned you were here," she realised. "No wonder you wanted me out of the way."
"We suspected your department knew something of our activities," Crayshaw agreed, "but Andrew Dolan knows so very little, while you know a great deal."
A soft chuckle.
"He is ours now. He was to have dealt with Vice Admiral Kelper on our behalf. Now you shall meet Kelper in his place."
"What have you done to Andrew?" she hissed. As if on cue, a ghostly light stole into the room. The stooped, brittle form of Crayshaw was revealed, standing just in front of her. And now she could see Andrew. His full, proud features just as dear and familiar as if he was sat in his office chair. But he was so pale. And when he spoke, the image seemed to ripple like a puddle at the end of a rainstorm.
"Help me, Vida," he breathed. "Save me. Before the feast."
"You're not real," she whispered. And now Vida could see what else was with her in the shadowy belly of this piece of the ship. People, rasping for breath, slashes in their cheeks and necks quivering like little mouths. She saw the real Andrew among them. And there was Rose Tyler, staring sightlessly with shiny eyes. Are they dead?"
"Our creatures must acclimatise," Crayshaw explained. "Soon they will learn to draw their oxygen exclusively from water. The gills we have grown for them will serve them well. Perhaps now you see why poor Mr. Dolan cannot meet the Vice Admiral."
It was sick. Horrible. "You can live on land and in the sea. Why can't he?"
"The trauma to his body is too fresh."
He gestured to himself.
"Total mastery of the human body is only possible after years of cellular integration."
"Why are you doing this?" she hissed. "And why is Kelper so important to you?"
"For the same reasons he is important to you, my dear," said Crayshaw blandly. "His authority, his office, the fleets he commands, these are necessary to us."
"Don't you think the naval brass might notice he's grown gills and pearly eyes?"
"His voice on the phone, his codes on a computer, these are all we require."
He nodded.
"And you will help us to procure them."
"Yes, I saw Rose too," was all the doctor would say. He strode through the walkways of the estate with a look in his dark eyes that said, "Do not mess." Mickey could hardly keep up with him. "We've got to go to her," said Keisha. "She's right. Rose needs us," said Mickey. The doctor didn't break his step, didn't turn. "Shut up," he said. "But she's in danger like Jay," Keisha insisted. "We have to get to her before the feast." "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" The doctor rounded on them both. "This whole planet could be in danger. Do you think I don't want to go jumping into the Thames after Rose?" He pinched the bridge of his nose, closed his eyes, trying to get a hold of himself. "I do want to. And I didn't even see her clearly. My senses are about 1,000 times smarter than yours. These creatures haven't got the measure of me yet, haven't learned how to press all my buttons, but they're having a damned good go." His eyes snapped open, urgent and soulful. "Now listen to me. You know those critters in the river are fishing for humans and they're not throwing them back. Knowing that is making it easier for your brains to fight against the alien effect. Don't trust the voices in your head. Don't trust these images of Rose. Trust me." Mickey considered. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to get Rose back." "But she's dying, drowning." "Yes," the doctor cried. "The dead are no good to these aliens, but they can merge with humans as they drown, rework the body, so that at the point of human death, something altogether more malleable is born." He turned to Mickey. "Right, you're with me." "Where are you going?" Mickey asked. "London's going down the tubes. And I suppose I am too." Not for the first time, Mickey was wondering how come he ever let the doctor talk him into doing anything. He'd meant it about going down the tubes, or, more accurately, down Aldgate Tube. It was 6:30 a.m. and the underground station was just opening. The doctor sonicked open a staff-only door in the side of the wall. It gave onto a cupboard space full of emergency equipment. Leading off from there was a narrow access corridor ending in another locked door. Soon the hum of the screwdriver was filling the little room. With the lock shocked to bits, the doctor opened the door to reveal a cramped circular tunnel, sloping downwards at an alarming angle. The walls were a thick spaghetti of coloured wiring all the way round. "Phone lines. Secret government link-up in case of nuclear war," the doctor whispered. "Crayshaw and his mates don't realise that this conduit passes within just a few inches of the decontamination chamber. Resonate the concrete till it falls apart and we'll be in. And from there, we can get inside and face these creatures in their lair." Crayshaw marched Vida into the reception of Stanchion House. At first, the place seemed deserted. But then she heard a voice. "Vida, what the hell is going on around here? I just strolled in. What the hell has happened to security?" A massive man in full naval dress uniform was striding towards them. Kelper. "All London's gone crazy. Couldn't reach Andrew nor you." Vida opened her mouth to speak, but Crayshaw got there first.
"Miss Swan informs me you have arrived to inspect the wreck of the Ascendant yourself, Admiral."
Kelper spoke frankly. "Your administration of this affair seems to be a mess, John. I found government ministers chasing their tails, a lack of communication between the naval ranks, a general absence of explanation as to how the Ascendant came to be in bits at the bottom of the sea, a conspiracy of silence."
"There is no conspiracy, I assure you,"
said Crayshaw, all smiles, crossing to the lift.
"You must inspect our underground laboratories for yourself. The sooner this matter is ended, the better."
The doors slid smoothly open. "Run!" Vida shouted suddenly, grabbing hold of Kelper's sleeve and yanking him away from Crayshaw. "He needs something from you. I don't know what." She started to drag Kelper after her, but as she heard water splash under her soles, she knew it was already too late. A carnival procession of pale, bloated freaks stood blocking the turnstiles. Her blood chilled at the sight of the Victorian lady, the pirate and the U-boat captain. And there were others. A dark-haired child in Regency lace, a group of young sailors in bell-bottoms, an old man in a stained apron.
"As I said, sir."
Crayshaw had removed his dark glasses, and now they could see the scabrous pearls that bulged obscenely from under his lids.
"The sooner this matter is ended, the better."
Keisha jolted awake from an uneasy sleep, a low, panicky feeling in her stomach. She opened her eyes. The ghost of Rose was standing sad-eyed and dripping in front of the TV. She opened up her arms like she wanted to give Keisha a big wet hug. "Please," she whispered. "I'm coming," said Keisha, crossing to the door. Rose looked so grateful as she splashed away to nothing. Vida was shoved into the lift after Kelper, propelled by cold, dead hands. "What the hell is happening?" He stared in horror at the ice-white, bloated faces pressing in around them.
"We are close to the spawning time,"
said Crayshaw over the smooth whine of the lift descending.
"And so you are needed, Vice Admiral Kelper. The ships of your navy must help us to spread."
Kelper sneered and shook his head. "You're crazy." The lift doors whooshed open. There was a clatter, a sudden hubbub, and at once Vida saw why the building above ground had seemed deserted. Everyone was down here in the secret labs. Soldiers, security guards, cleaners. The squad leader came forward to address Crayshaw while his fellows held back, staring uneasily as the sinister crowd spilled from the lift. "Sir, we've been waiting for your orders. Surely the protection of this building and the wreck outside should be our priority, not these labs." "We've all been stuck down here for hours," snapped a cleaning woman, clearly too tired and angry to be afraid, "while you're mucking about having a fancy dress party. I've got to get on, you know." Everyone jumped except Crayshaw as the doors to the decontamination room opened. Suddenly, with a rushing, thundering roar, a wave of filthy water came flooding in. Vida shut her eyes as the water came gushing towards her. Then the wall above the decon chamber exploded. A welter of concrete and shrapnel boomed out in an awesome dust cloud, splashed down into the torrent of water to create an impromptu dam. The filthy wave broke over her and the others, but seemed somehow robbed of its force. The echoes of the explosion span round the enormous room. Crayshaw gave an inhuman shriek of fury, but carrying above it came a very human-sounding voice. "Ha! Now that's what I call resonating concrete!" "Doctor!" Vida yelled. He was crouched on one knee, that screwdriver thing of his clamped in one hand, laughing like he couldn't quite believe what he'd done. She was already up and running towards him. "Come on!" she shouted to the others. "It's the cavalry!" The ones not paralysed by fear and shock, Kelper, the cleaner, a handful of soldiers, ran after her. But Crayshaw and his barmy buddies weren't distracted long. The water was soon seething around their feet, sucking at their heels. "Come on!" That was Mickey's voice. "You can climb up the rubble. We'll help you." Vida scrambled up the rock pile. For a giddy moment she felt safe at last as Mickey pulled her up from the precipice and into a cramped circular passage wreathed with wiring. Mickey looked accusingly at the doctor. "This don't look like a decontamination chamber." "I was close," the doctor said defensively. "It's just down there. Wasn't I close, Vida?" Vida hugged him. "Close enough for me." Kelper pulled himself through the hole in the wall. "I don't know what the hell's going on," he spluttered, "but those are aliens." "Oh, do you think?" The doctor affected puzzlement. Then he noticed a red-haired soldier struggling up the teetering pile of concrete. "Private Jody North!" She reached out frantically for his outstretched hand, and he hauled her up. "I pinched your pass. Sorry." "It's all right," she said. "I'm going AWOL." She retreated into the cable-strewn tunnel. Oh, God! Vida saw that the rest of the crowd were trapped in the water. It had frozen to ice around them. Only the cleaner stood a chance. She had managed to pull one foot clear. The doctor jumped down to help her. He grabbed a lump of concrete and hammered at the ice. "Where'd all this water come from?" Mickey wondered. "The Thames, I suppose," said Vida. "There's a way up from the drainage pit to the river. That's how they flooded it in the first place. They can influence water." "Yeah, I see that," croaked Mickey. Crayshaw was coming to get them. His gruesome army had burst apart like water balloons. Now he rode the resultant stream like an aged surfer towards the doctor. "Yes!" Vida cheered as with a final desperate blow the doctor freed the cleaner's foot from the icy trap. She lost her trainer in the process, reached up for Mickey, who grabbed hold of her hands and yanked her up to the ledge. The doctor hurled the trainer at Crayshaw's head. The old man's dark glasses were knocked clear. He twisted and fell backwards, while the doctor climbed up the rock pile and rejoined the others. Vida swallowed hard, pointed. "Look at Crayshaw!" He was lying on his front. In the fall, the scarf around his neck had come loose. Vida caught a glimpse of something bloated and hideous skulking at the top of the old man's spine, a wide eye glistening in a slimy carapace. "What's that fishy thing?" asked Mickey. A glimpse of the real enemy, probably plugged right into the brainstem for maximum control of the subject, the doctor said, as Crayshaw righted himself.
"Return Kelper to us," Crayshaw said calmly, "or we shall destroy Rose Tyler, Andrew Dolan, all of them."
"You need those people," the doctor argued. Crayshaw shook his head.
"The calling goes on. So many come to answer. The number of victims increases exponentially. Soon the Thames will be choked with bodies, all awaiting our purpose."
"And what would that be?" the doctor breathed. "Just why do you need so much flesh?" Vida felt sick as an especially nasty penny dropped. "Doctor, he said that these things are nearing their time to spawn." "What?" Mickey turned up his nose. "You mean those fish things are gonna reproduce?" Vida pointed at Kelper hanging back in the passageway. "They want him to arrange ships to carry them and their hatchlings around the world, to start the whole thing over again and again." "Hatchlings? From eggs?" The doctor stared at him. "So that's why you need incubators. Human incubators, I'm right, aren't I?" Crayshaw smiled.
"It is the spawning time."
Yeah, and the living is easy. How long have you been on Earth anyway? How many centuries?"
"We lay dormant for so long. Our numbers few, our energy is spent from projecting ourselves through space. We recharged, drew energy from the creatures of the sea."
"And then you got a taste for drowning humans." The doctor's eyes were wide and dark. "Got your teeth into the dominant species, saved them from death so you could give them something worse."
"We learned from them, learned the possibilities of their world and how we could walk among them. Crayshaw was the first. He became the hive queen. Now it is the spawning time."
"Lovely. So you make the Thames into a paddock for your underwater cattle, and once the eggs hatch inside them, the newborn devour the flesh from the inside. A proper feast. Well, I'm going to stop you, whatever it takes." The doctor beamed at Mickey and Vida as he strode backwards away from the ledge and into the gloomy quiet of the tunnel, where Jodie North was still waiting. And once there, his brave face dropped like a ton of bricks. "Think they believe me?" Nobody spoke. The only sound was the water roaring round the ruined lab, like an angry hunter cheated of its kill. Keisha was pushing her way through the thronging streets. She had met the first soldiers some way from the river. The checkpoint blocking the road was one of scores that had brought traffic to a standstill, as drivers were forced to divert down all manner of back streets. There was more than just annoyance in the eyes of some of these passers-by. She saw despair, anger, determination. How many of them were looking for a way through to the river? Then she saw Jay, there in the middle of the unseeing crowd. He looked anguished, holding out his hands to her. She couldn't hear his words this time, but she could imagine them. "Why are you waiting, Keish? Time's running out." She had to get to the river. Deep in the drainage pit, Rose could feel the terrible cold of the water around her. With the cold came an awful clarity. I shouldn't be here. But she could feel the alien eggs inside her like little weights holding her down. Once she had been devoured by the hatchlings, this dark, freezing world would be theirs to inherit. Rose struck out through the darkness, pushed against the bodies all around her, trying to keep calm. If she could only find a way out. She moved slowly through the eerie ranks of the drowned. They milled about in the thick water, the dull gleam of their silvery eyes the only light, their hair drifting lazily in the water like weeds. Then Rose's heart twitched as she recognised a figure. Jay, it's me, Rose." He saw her and smiled sadly.
I tried so hard not to bring you here.
You didn't. I got myself into this.
I tried to escape,
Jay told her.
They brought me back.
Then we'll try again. Jay clutched at Rose's arm.
I could see Quiche. Couldn't make myself heard, but I could see her.
He looked at her.
She's on her way.
Vida was huddled with the others in the shattered section of the tunnel. Kelper was examining their surroundings. I take it these conduits lead back to the surface? He asked. I must get to someone in authority. We need to wipe out these things. What you need to do, the doctor told him, is to seal off the Thames. Countermand any order that's been given by Commodore Powers. No ship is to leave for open sea under any circumstances. Got it? But I'm US Navy, he protested. It'll take time to arrange. Make it happen, the doctor thundered. Now move. Vida interceded. It's okay. You can trust him. 100 metres up this tunnel. Then right, left, up a bit, left, straight on at the junction, a right. The doctor paused, frowned at Kelper. You getting this? I am, said the cleaner breathlessly. My boyfriend drives a cab. It rubs off on you. The doctor gave her a rakish smile. Like I was saying, left, right, and then straight on till you reach a cupboard at Aldgate Station. He lowered his voice, nodded confidentially at Kelper. Oh, and look after the bloke in the braid. Apparently he's important. He patted Jodie North on the back. Go with them too. She swung her gun onto her shoulder. Protection. Safety in numbers. What about you? Just get going. No, hang on, she's got a point, said Mickey. What about us? What are we going to do? Jodie hesitated, reached into a pouch in her uniform, pulled out a chunky grenade. Bullets were no good. Maybe I should have tried this. She pressed it into the doctor's hands. He stared at it, bemused, like it was Christmas and she was handing him an Easter egg. Tar, Jodie, but no tar. I could never use this. I could. Mickey gingerly took the grenade himself. Not even you can talk everything to death. The doctor set off down the tunnel. Well, now that Mickey the untrained civilian's got a hand grenade, hey, we're safe as houses. Yes, sighed Vida. Aren't we just? A thought suddenly hit Rose. Hang on, Jay. What do you mean you've seen Keisha?
I tried to warn her away, but this stuff in me wouldn't let the words out.
But you could actually see her through the eyes of your image. If you can do it, maybe we all can. Just imagine, we could play these creatures at their own game, confuse their message, get our own ones through. But even as she said it, Rose doubled up with pain, clutching her temples. Mickey held aside a fat bundle of wires so the doctor could do his sonic stuff on the tunnel wall. It was supposed to be a safe place to break through, into a kind of basement beneath the labs. Suddenly, he started choking.
My mouth's gone dry.
Mine too, hissed Vida. Stop it, Doctor. Rose glowed into sudden ghostly existence right in front of them. You mustn't interfere. They'll kill me if you do. Rose! Mickey shouted out and collapsed, clutching his legs. Water poured from the spectre's eyes. They'll destroy me. You're destroying them, the doctor shouted back. Listen to me, Mickey, Vida, whatever you're seeing, you mustn't believe it. Shut it out. Can't, croaked Mickey, staring transfixed. Vida felt her insides ache and burn, wanted to cry, but no tears would come. Rose, remember what I told you, the doctor implored the vision. We trust the people we love to tell the truth. We trust them not to harm us. What's she doing? Gasped Vida. The apparition is strengthening itself with the water from your bodies. The doctor clutched hold of Mickey's hand, pressed his forehead up close to Vida's. You must shut it out! An enormous, crushing blackness was bulldozing through Vida's head, but she could still hear the sound of Rose's voice. Don't fight, Doctor. Surrender to us, or your friends will die. Rose heard Jay's voice in her ear.
Go with it, Rose. Go into the image. Open its eyes and look through them.
Jay was cuddling her. How many nights had 14-year-old Rose Tyler spent dreaming of this? She felt a sudden contented glow inside her. A glow that grew brighter. White hot, like the supernatural shine at the centre of the TARDIS. She closed her eyes, but somehow that made the light brighter still. So she opened them again. And suddenly, she could see Mickey on the ground in some poky little hole, and the doctor wide-eyed and fierce and desperate, Vida reaching out, racked with pain. We trust the people we love to tell the truth. "Stop hurting," she said. "Just stop hurting them." Vida felt the blackness beginning to clear, saw the image of Rose was losing form and focus. "You what?" The doctor started nodding encouragingly at the phantom. "Rose, say again." "Doctor, forget about me. Just stop these." The image burst into droplets. Vida felt sick. Her head ached, but she was alive. "What happened?" asked Mickey, pushing himself up off the floor. "Rose fought the hive influence, hijacked the apparition and used it to communicate with us." Vida felt slow and unsteady. How? Maybe she had help. Maybe the water hive's influence is being spread thinner as its victims rack up. Maybe it's because her travels with me have affected her body's makeup in some way. He shrugged and smiled to himself. Or maybe just because she's Rose. "I suppose it shows that these creatures aren't completely unbeatable." "You've done pretty well at proving that, Vida," said Mickey. "They tried to shoot you while escaping with him, and you escape. They tried to kidnap you and drag you back here, and you escape." The doctor got to work with his sonic screwdriver again. "Good point, Mickey." "What?" "Their attitude to Vida hasn't been all that consistent, has it? The water hive went to a lot of time and trouble spiriting you away from your offices. Why?" Vida frowned. "Just unlucky, I suppose." "Hang on!" he yelled. "It's because of me and what I got up to in your labs. That sample of water from the drainage pit. I must have made it shout for help." Vida was far too tired and scared to be offended. "So Crayshaw's minions came running, thinking that since I work there, it's me who's doing it." "They didn't know any better. Their water tried to get inside my head, but it couldn't." He licked a finger and smoothed one eyebrow. "My God, I'm just too good." "So what were you doing to that water?" Mickey demanded. "Vida, you know those tracers you were hoping to release from the Ascendant? I just mixed some into the alien water to see what happened." "And what did happen?" "Nothing. The water didn't seem to care. No frothing, no churning, no bubbling over, nothing." The doctor froze. "Nothing." "Nothing?" He yanked down hard on the housing of the screwdriver, made it flare into bright blue life. "Nothing!" And then the wall exploded. Vida threw herself backwards into Mickey as the three of them were peppered with chips of concrete. "That's a pretty big kind of nothing," Mickey choked. "And so was that nothing in the water," the doctor crowed, waving his arm about to dispel some of the thick concrete dust. "The hive didn't want those tracers to use as a weapon. It didn't want us to have them, in case we used them as a weapon. Rose has just proved that the alien signals can be overridden. If we could somehow use the transmitters in the tracers to amplify that effect, we could stuff these creatures right up." Mickey was smiling too, caught up in the moment. "And so we've got some of these tracer things, right?" The doctor pulled a face. Not as such." "Then we're the ones who are stuffed." "I know where we can get some," Vida announced, almost reluctantly. "But how the hell would we activate them?" "Never mind that." The doctor grabbed her by the waist. "Where are they?" She shrugged. "We had a great big batch of them stowed aboard the Ascendant, remember? They're in the ship's stores on board the cargo trailer." "Oh, terrific," said Mickey. "So basically we're stuck way down here, about as underground as it's possible to be, while the stuff we need is floating on top of the river." "Looks like it," the doctor agreed, his eyes darting all around. You could almost hear his mind working its way through a million mad strategies. "Still, look on the bright side, Mickey." He flashed a small but dangerous smile. "For you, the only way is up." "I did it," Rose breathed. She was slumped on the floor, numb all over from the freezing water, but something fierce and satisfied burned inside her. "What happened?" asked Jay. She realised he was squeezing her hand. "I saw my friends, spoke to them. Just for a minute." She struggled up. "It was so hard, though." "Rose, can you talk to Quiche?" Jay asked urgently. "I can try," she told him, squeezing his hand back. Crowds of people surged up to the blockades that barred all access to the Thames. Sometimes the army fired shots in the air, trying to scare them back, but the crowd barely reacted. Keisha understood these people. They were on a mission to save the ones they loved, and so was she, whatever it took. Suddenly Rose appeared. Her friend was floating in front of her like a ghost. She looked terrible. Her face was scored with bloody lines. Her eyes were all wrong, silvery smooth, no pupils. "Stop!" Rose shouted. "It's a trick! Evil! You've got to stop!" "But Rose, Jay's safe, but he won't be if you come," she gritted her teeth. "Whatever you see, keep everyone back. Away from here. Get me?" Keisha wiped away her tears. "What can I do?" "We're sorting it." Then the image was gone. More gunshots were fired off above the rioting crowd, and Keisha didn't know what to do. "I did all I could," Rose told Jay. "I think I got through to her, but I don't know. It's crazy up there. In fact," she stood shakily up, "I think we need to go there ourselves, to the surface." "I almost got out before," said Jay. "The waterway to the river was guarded, so I tried the cargo lift shaft. Managed to get all the way up, but I was too slow. They found me, took me back. Now there are guards making sure no one else tries it." "The tug's gone anyway," said Rose, "so no escape that way. We'll just have to leave the same way we came in. If we can only get out of here, show people what's happened to us, tell them how they're being tricked. What have we got to lose? We're full of alien eggs that could hatch any minute." "There's nothing to lose," Jay agreed. "Then round up the boys," said Rose. "We're busting out of here." The doctor had sent Mickey and Vida up the emergency stairs while he doubled back the other way. He was the main target, so he figured there was a better chance of them making it up and out of the building without him. But the water was already chasing them. They reached the top and slammed the door shut behind them, pelted along a corridor, through some more double doors, along another corridor. But behind them came a savage splintering noise as the stairwell door was torn from its hinges by the great rush of water. Seconds later, with a stereo crash, the double doors were thrown open. The hissing, bubbling sound rushed closer and closer. "We can't outrun it!" shouted Vida as they stumbled into the main reception at last. "Remember Crashaw down there?" Mickey scrambled up onto the reception desk, pulled her up after him. "Old Sea Dog, new tricks." The tide of dirty water smashed through into reception, the stairwell door pitching on top of it like a massive surfboard. Mickey nodded to Vida and jumped for it. He landed awkwardly, but at least he was on board, and Vida was clinging on behind him. She shrieked and he yelled as the miniature tsunami reared up, carrying them above the turnstiles, and straight into the plate glass frontage of Stanchion House. The door hit the thick glass edge-on and shattered it. Mickey twisted round so his back took the impact, fell forwards onto Vida. For a second the two clung together as jagged shards rained down around them. Then their makeshift bodyboard hit the ground and Mickey was thrown clear. He must have blacked out for a minute. Next thing he knew, Vida was cradling him on the ground. "Did we make it?" he asked, staring round, head spinning. "Almost," she told him softly. And as his vision focused, he saw the pirate, the Victorian lady and the kid, all looming over him. Their heads looked too big for their bodies, the faces bloated and eel-white, misshapen eyes ready to plop out of their sockets as they reached down to tear at him with shrivelled, groping fingers. "Cooey!" The doctor peeped through the hole he had made in the wall of the underground laboratories. They had been trashed and deserted. Big cracks had opened in the floor and walls where bits of ship had toppled over. It was eerily quiet. Water suddenly gushed out of one of the cracks in the floor, and Crashaw formed from the foam.
"Why have you returned?"
"Like the humans you're manipulating, I couldn't stay away. Caught up with Kelper yet?"
"You will soon be recaptured."
"If not, it sets back your plans for expansion, doesn't it? You need the ships he can arrange for you." Suddenly, the bloated corpses of two fishermen appeared, grabbed an arm each and twisted. The doctor shouted in pain, didn't struggle.
"Why have you returned?"
Crashaw asked again. "To deal. Like I said, no Kelper, no ships, no expansion." The doctor half smiled. "But I have an amazing ship, and powers that are, frankly, godlike. I'll share these with you. if you leave the earth and its people alone." Crayshaw stood impassive and blank. "Come on," he complained. "This is a top offer, amazing value. Through me, the hive can spread not only through space, but through time." Suddenly, the scarf around Crayshaw's neck started to twitch. His flesh melted away like wrinkled wax to reveal the true creature controlling the old, stiff body. "Well, well," said the doctor. "The hive queen is an ancient one-eyed eel the size of a chihuahua." But the queen was twitching, swelling up, her glutinous body growing bigger and fatter. Stubby fins and protuberances squeezed from her vile body like pus from a zit. Soon, the creature had swollen to the size of a small car. "I suppose you do that to intimidate your prey?" the doctor asked softly. "It's very good, very effective." "You wish to share your powers and your ship with me," hissed the queen. "I wish to take them." Held helpless in the grip of her guards, the doctor could only watch as the queen slithered towards him. Vida shut her eyes as the hands came down for them. We so nearly made it, she thought. But now it was over. The sound of sirens and shouting carried from the other side of the river, and she bellowed back, in fear and pain and anger that these things would get away with. "Stop!" came a familiar voice. "Leave them alone, or I get it." Vida's heart jumped in her bruised chest. She looked up, past their gruesome pursuers, and saw Rose in a man's dripping grip. With a sick feeling, she took in the bloody lines scored in the flesh of their cheeks and necks, the pearly tinge to the eyes. And behind them she realised a menagerie of figures, horribly disfigured, was shambling closer. "Look out, Rose!" she yelled. "It's all right, they're on our side," Rose told her. "Couldn't have got past the guards without them. So hear this, you water zombie things. Get away from those two people or I'm history, and so are the eggs I'm carrying." She gestured behind her. "And this lot will kill each other too. Just watch them." Vida saw that a large chunk of broken glass was being held to the girl's neck. "Get your hands off her," said Mickey hoarsely. He tried weakly to stand, but Vida shushed him. "Don't," she whispered. "Look, they're doing as she says." To her astonishment, the three guards were backing uneasily away. Their instinct is to protect their eggs. Vida helped Mickey get back up, and they limped warily over to join this bizarre cavalry. She saw that the pirate and the kid had disappeared, leaving only the Victorian lady giving them the evil pearl eye. "They've gone to ask Mum what they should do," Vida surmised. "We can't have long." "Where's the doctor, Vida?" Rose asked. "He went to distract Crayshaw, the leader of the hive, to buy us time so we can get the tracers. What, those chemical things you chuck in the ocean?" "As summaries of my life's work go, that's not bad," said Vida wryly. "The doctor needs us to get those chemical things you chuck in the ocean, but—" She pointed to the cargo dump left behind when they'd taken the tug. "They should be somewhere in the store lockers, the place you were brought to acclimatise after they did that to you. Do you remember?" "Oh yeah," said Rose, shivering in the sunlight. "So basically, if we can get past the walking drowned and the sea monsters, we're laughing. What do these tracers look like?"
"Big metal flasks wrapped in a kind of posh crate," rasped one of the sailors, a dark-skinned boy. "There were 100 aboard."
Vida stared. "How did you—"
"I worked in the stores," he told her, wheezing for breath. "I don't know how many survived the wreck. Maybe none at all, but I'll see what I can find."
"We'll need the whole crate," Vida said. "It's part of the release assembly. It'll take 2 to shift it, minimum." "I'll go with you, Jay," Rose told him. "Can't you just stay here?" Mickey urged her. "What, here where it's safe, you mean? Say you'll kill a sailor or two," she told Mickey, squeezing his arm. "It might keep those things back for a bit longer." He nodded bleakly and watched her run with Jay over to the cargo dump. "Fingers crossed," murmured Vida, and went to find herself a mutated sailor to threaten. The store and the cargo trailer was just as cold, wet and dark as Rose remembered.
"The flasks were kept over here,"
said Jay, exploring the shelved walls of the store.
Yes, some must have fallen out, but the crate itself is sound. Give me a hand undoing these straps. We can drag it out.
Come on then. But as Rose splashed across the floor to join him, she heard a sucking noise, whirled round. Behind her were 3 things, glutinous and white. They were slithering over the wet floor towards her. Rose's stomach turned. They looked to be part slug, part fish. 2 long, needle-like tusks stuck out from the white jelly flesh of their faces. "Jay," she said shakily, backing away. "We've been rumbled." He swore, tugged at the top of one of the flasks.
"Can we use these on them?"
"I don't know how they work," Rose told him. "What are we meant to do with them anyway?"
"I don't know. I can't get it out of the crate."
Jay smashed his fist against the metal.
"Useless."
Uh-oh, here come more of them. The pallid creatures were uncoiling from the dank darkness beneath the shelving, pushing out their heads like giant snails.
"They can't hurt us, can they? Not with what's inside us."
"They won't have to. Just wash us back into the river along with the latest recruits, drag us back down into the pit." She stared round helplessly. "Back to square one."
"Then we'll have to leg it while we can,"
said Jay. He readied himself to jump the encroaching creatures. Then he stopped.
Oh no.
A towering grey-brown wedge of solid Thames was peering away from the surface, ready to come crashing down on the cargo trailer. "The crate!" Rose yelled over the oncoming roar. "Jay, grab hold of the crate!"
"It's no good. It's not heavy enough," he told her. "The wave will wash it out with us."
"Exactly!" She hugged the crate, gripping on as hard as she could. "If they're going to take us, they can have this too." Then the wave struck. The ground tipped. The freezing water sledgehammered Rose's back, knocking all breath from her. Grimly, she clung onto the crate as they were swilled back out of the dump and into the river. There were voices shouting for her, Mickey's and Vida's too, but she couldn't catch their words. The crate dragged her down, but she wasn't going to let go now. Not if this was the one thing the doctor said could hurt these things. She felt herself snatched by the dark currents of the river, shut her eyes, and clung on as she was tugged down deeper and deeper. "Rose!" Vida yelled from the river's stone edge as the girl was plucked back down beneath the water.
"It's no good,"
said Mickey, staring in disbelief over the shoulder of the sailor he held in a necklock.
"She's gone."
"And so have the tracers." Vida hugged her own sailor dismally. "That's it then."
"I thought we wanted the tracers in the water,"
said Mickey. "The release trigger for the flasks is built into the bottom of the crate. Without that, the contents are locked inside. Useless." Feeling numb, she barely looked up as a fresh wave of noise crashed across from the far bank of the river. A seething scrum of people had broken through the barriers. They jumped or fell screaming into the river. Hundreds of them.
"That's it then,"
said Mickey. She thought he was talking about the exodus into the Thames. But as she slowly turned, she saw that the pirate and the kid had returned. And with them was Commodore Powers and a few other Fright Night friends. Too late, Vida saw the water pooling at their feet. A moment later, 2 more of the ravaged figures burst into being. A submarine captain and an old man in a greatcoat. The old man, pearl eyes gleaming, pushed Mickey to the ground and grabbed Vida by the throat, while Powers led the others in a sudden, stumbling charge to get the rest of them. "Get on with it then," the doctor snarled. The Queen had slithered round behind him, squelching and slithering. Suddenly, the sinister fisherman released him, stood away. "About time," he said. "I've lost all feeling in my arms waiting for—" The sharp tips of her giant mandibles probed the back of his neck. It felt like scalding hot water was pumping into his body. "Feeling in the arms, back now, thanks," he gasped. Then it seemed he could do nothing but boil as the probes pushed into his spine. Keisha was caught up in the milling crowd as the barriers broke and overturned. She wanted to scream, but the breath had been all but crushed from her lungs by the crowds as she was carried backwards onto the wharf. Then she glimpsed a girl being jostled towards her. 7 or 8, a black girl, wide-eyed and terrified. Keisha just stared, paralysed for a few seconds. By the time she'd reached out a hand, it was too late. The girl had been bustled by. "Stop!" Keisha screamed, and she fell fighting into the crowd, into the river. She grabbed the little girl, putting all her strength into holding the child above her head, out of the water. Vida gasped as Mickey charged between her and the old man, breaking them apart. She staggered back to the river's edge, choking. In desperation, she was about to throw herself into the grey waters when it bubbled up, right in front of her eyes. The crate tossed about on the river with Rose still clinging onto it like a half-drowned rat. "Wouldn't let me in!" Rose shouted frantically. "I think they know these things can hurt them. Want rid of them, but not me." The water foamed white around Rose and then erupted, throwing her clear as the entire crate was literally spat out of the water. Vida stared at it disbelievingly for a few seconds. There it was, their one shot at fighting back. But without the proper signal, there was no way to release the tracers from the flasks. Unless... The old man was scuttling towards her again. Vida broke into a run, fell upon the crate, tried to heave it back towards the river. "Mickey, that grenade, where is it?" But then the old man's hand clamped around her mouth, wormed into water that started to force its way down her throat. Holding her breath, weeping with fear, Vida kept furiously shoving at the crate, nudging it back towards the water, until the old man hauled her clear. He started to drag her away, arms and legs flailing. Why had he stopped? Vida looked down and saw Rose had resurfaced and was gripping the old man round the ankle, anchoring herself to him as something in the water tried to drag her back under. With the last of her strength, Vida twisted free and stumbled back over to the crate. She strained to shift it, but she was too weak. Then a hand clapped down on her shoulder. It was Mickey, and in his other hand he had the grenade. With both of them behind it, the crate scraped across the concrete till it sat teetering on the edge. Vida looked back. The old man was free once more, turning to face them. "We've got to blow it apart once it's in the water," she panted. 5 second fuse on these things," said Mickey, trying to jam it into a split in the crate's casing. "Will water put it out?" The old man grabbed hold of Mickey with one hand and threw him into the water. But the grenade was still wedged in place. A drowned child ran towards her, grinning, water spilling from its ears and nose. It threw itself onto her back, but Vida didn't let its cold, dead weight shift her. She depressed the safety handle, pulled on the pin. 5. By some miracle, the grenade stayed in place. The child's hands scrabbled for her throat. 4. Tendrils of water coiled round her throat like steel bands and squeezed. 3. Her vision blurring, holding her breath, Vida pushed herself and the crate forwards into the water with a cold splash. 2. At once, she was steered away and down into the dark depths of the river, the child riding her like a jockey. But what about the crate? Would it be thrown straight back out again? 1. The blackness grew absolute. Please, God, let it not all have been for nothing. Rose had used the last of her strength trying to stop the old man from getting Vida. Now she gave herself up to the darkness and the hungry current. Then shockwaves blasted through the water. There was a tang in her mouth, a cold chemical taste. And then Rose thought of the doctor. Shut her eyes as the entrance to the drainage channel loomed ready to swallow her. Will he ever know? She wondered. Will the doctor know we did it? And then suddenly there he was. She could see him, eyes tight shut, standing up in some blinding white place, standing in a bubbling pool of water with a monster close behind, its 2 needle tusks inserted deep into his neck. But somehow he must have sensed that her image was there, for his eyes opened Bambi-wide. She felt he could see her as clear and bright as the moon, and he forced a wonky smile. "Of course you did it," he said. Sinking to his knees, he put his fingers to his temples and shouted at the top of his lungs. "Doctor?" Rose didn't see or hear what happened next, because she was back in the black water, sinking like a stone. The doctor felt like barbed wire was being dragged round his head, snagging on every nerve. A bright ball of light was searing through his senses. Slowly, it became a vast eye, filling his mind pearly and lolling in its encrusted carapace. "Now your cells are ours, Doctor." The eerie voice held no triumph, like it had always known things would end this way. "We have you." He spoke aloud, an anchor to the real world he could no longer see through his stinging eyes. "Well, actually, I might just have you. We are linked to you now. You are as one with the hive." "Yes, I am," the doctor agreed. Slowly he straightened, forcing himself to his feet. "My mind is your mind and all that. We swim the same cold, deep water. Sorry, old love, but I think you might be in hot water." The doctor gritted his teeth. "Because I let you into my head. I needed you up close and personal so I could fathom your wavelength. Puns fully intended, by the way, because now I know that my friends have done what they set out to do. I can do this." In his mind, he grabbed that heavy, dreadful eye and planted a big wet kiss upon it. For a second, he experienced life through the alien senses of the Queen. The signals that teemed about her like life, the billions of scraps of information that fed her, that sped from her, that held the hive in harmony and allowed it to spread and grow. He breathed in those senses. He experienced the hive dreaming through her, the first stirrings of life in every egg. And as he shuddered, so they stilled. Quickly he felt out through the black complexity of the alien water and grasped the new filaments that were drifting out in clusters. All those tiny transmitting filaments. Rose and Vida and Mickey and everyone had risked their little lives to get them there. And before the last of his strength could leave him, he thought over the Queen. He switched on those transmitters with a single murmured command. And he felt the same sting that she did as the water became alive with new signals. "How long have you prospered by poisoning love and longing?" The doctor gasped. "How many races have you tricked, drowned and slaughtered just so you can go on existing? Well, it stops here." A piercing shriek jolted through his mind, but he did not falter. "That's not just feedback, it's payback." As the Queen screamed out, the doctor screamed with her, cast out into the deep and the blackness. Surviving the blast in the water had been the easy bit. The child had drained away, but Vida was still caught in the eddying current. She shut her eyes as the creatures swarmed around her, pricked her with spindly tusks, tore at her skin like they wanted to tease her apart in revenge for what she had done. She felt herself spinning helplessly, like a whirlpool had sprung up and was dragging her in, or pushing her out. In a dizzying rush, she broke the surface of the water along with one or two of the laws of physics. Close behind her, Mickey popped up, cut and bruised and bewildered. "What's going on?" he spluttered. "Where did those things go?" Vida looked. Outside Stanchion House, the grisly, bloated figures of the long-since drowned had vanished, leaving the sailors in a daze on the concrete concourse. "I don't know," she said. "I don't have a clue." Back on the far bank, the people still tumbling into the Thames were bouncing back up, shrieking and screaming and splashing, but otherwise unharmed. And all across the water, as far as the eye could see, heads were bobbing into view, strange pearls given up by the riverbed. Vida was so gobsmacked she let in a mouthful of the water, then spat it out and grimaced. "Salt! This river's awash with salt!" Mickey managed to balance himself in a kneeling position. "Normal salt or weird alien salt?" "Give you two guesses," she offered, "but that's why we're floating. We can't sink." She gingerly stood up. "Look! I'm walking on water!" But Mickey wasn't looking. He was pointing past her, laughing and cheering, because the stodgy river had parted to allow Rose through, close to the bank outside Stanchion House. "You all right?" Mickey bellowed, scrambling across the water to reach her. "I think so." Her fingers traced the thin scars that lined her cheeks and neck. "These gill things, it's like they're healing, but it's so fast." Mickey stared at Rose, at the people spewed up by the salty river and walking on water. The bemused smile on his face slowly grew. "What happened? What the hell happened?" "What do you think happened?" Rose yelled, a grin breaking open her face. "The doctor happened." "Oi! Less of the past tense," came a weary but very familiar voice. "Doctor!" Rose led the chorus, just as she led the way over to grab him in a hug. "Thanks to you lot," the doctor explained, "I was able to set those little chemical transmitters going. Swamped the hive's means of communication. Without information, without coordination, the group mind was shattered. They went to pieces." "So what's happened to those fish creatures?" Vida asked. "You've been paddling in them," he said casually. "I told you they went to pieces. Unless I'm very much mistaken, the proteins they manipulated have been broken down into salts." He jumped clumsily onto the surface of the Thames, dipped his finger and licked it. "I'm not very much mistaken," he announced, grimacing. Relief swept over Vida and she smiled at him warmly. "I never doubted it for a second." Keisha sat on the wharf, wrapped in a tinfoil blanket and sipping Red Cross tea, hoping the police had found the little girl's parents by now. They had cordoned off this part of the bank and no one seemed keen to break that barrier on either side. When the sailors emerged from the river with their shiny eyes and slits in their faces, the authorities tried to hide them from view. But Keisha had caught sight of Jay and she'd struggled, threatened and beaten her way through to get to him. Now she rested her head on his shoulder as they stared out over the unlikely scenes of fear and jubilation on the solid grey stripe of the Thames. "Mum called me," she said. "We were going to go to you together. Something must have happened, I guess." He nodded. "But when all this calms down, when you're feeling better again," she looked at him, "well, we'll find her."
"Maybe."
"She called, Jay. She ain't forgotten us."
"Only 'cause I made her,"
he snorted softly.
"Mum ain't coming back, sis, whatever she said."
Keisha didn't speak for a while. "When she called up the flat out of the blue, I was going crazy thanks to you, and it was such a shock, it sort of made me snap out of it. I guessed that if she'd never gone away..."
"Well, maybe we've got something to thank her for after all," said Jay.
They looked at each other, and after a few seconds, shook their heads. "Nah." Jay laughed, held Keisha closer.
"Things can never be the way they were, 'cause we're none of us the people we were."
He smiled ruefully, waved at his still pearly eyes.
"Or did you notice that?"
A tear teased itself down her cheek. "Stop it," she said, and found she was talking to herself as much as to Jay. "You'll get better. You'll get back to how you were."
"I'm hoping I'll become more than that if I try."
He paused.
"Like Rose. No matter what happened or how bad things got, she never stopped trying, you know?"
Keisha nodded. "She's so different to how she was. She's amazing."
"What about you?"
Jay prodded her.
"You probably saved that little girl's life, sis. You made a difference."
"I didn't think. Just blundered in as usual."
"That's all life is. Blundering about from one thing to the next."
Keisha half smiled. "I'm hoping for the best, yeah?"
"Gotta keep hoping, 'cause things keep changing."
He put his arm round her again.
"And if we want to, we can change with them."
The doctor was all for clearing off as soon as possible, as usual, but Rose wasn't going anywhere till she knew the people she loved were safe. Luckily, for her nerves and his attention span, the news came sooner rather than later. They were down in the gigantic labs, helping the baffled, frightened victims of the water hive out of the drainage pit in the darkness. It had been a bit of a scramble, but everyone got out alive, Anne included. Vida had found her boss, and the two had enjoyed a tearful reunion that bordered on the indecent. "Good working relationship," Rose observed. Vida led Andrew over by the hand. He looked to be in a bit of a daze, but Rose saw his scars were healing even faster than her own. "Now I'd better get this one to a hospital and catch up with Kelper. There's a hell of a mess to clean up." Lucky he's got that cleaner with him, said Mickey. You joke, but he's already roped in her and Jodie. They've set up a special emergency clinic at Aldgate Station. Anyone who's come into contact with the water needs to register for a special jab. That way the Navy can keep a quiet eye on everyone who's been in the water, just to check there are no long-term effects. Rose nodded. The doctor didn't seem to think there would be, but better safe than sorry. Will you and the doctor be sticking around? Vida asked her. She wrinkled her nose. Not really our style. Well, I won't ask where you'll be going. We don't even know ourselves. But wherever it is, don't drink the water. She smiled, blew Rose and Mickey a kiss, and walked away. Rose glanced over at the doctor. He was facing her now, sneakers wet through, suit dishevelled, hair all over the place. Smiling. It was time to go. She looked back at Mickey. I'll be back again. In about 10 minutes, probably. Just you wait. And though neither of them really believed it, they smiled and nodded like it was true. She pressed a kiss against his cheek, waved to Vida and the others, then turned and walked slowly away, texting Keisha as she went. Whatever you do, be happy. See you soon. Love, R. Kiss, kiss, kiss. She reached the doctor, and he raised his eyebrows at her. Finished? Not quite. P.S. Big hugs to your gorgeous bruv. She pressed send and then switched off the phone. You know, there was this bloke who used to scare me and Keisha when we were kids. Old Scary, we called him. He used to go around shouting stuff in his horrible voice, all sorts of things. He even made the nice bits sound frightening. I'd hear him from my room sometimes. I'd hide under the covers and listen to him going on all night. She cast back her mind. Many waters cannot quench love. That was one he came out with a lot. Neither can the floods drown it. And? Rose shrugged. Maybe he wasn't really so scary after all. You want scary? The doctor took her hand. I'll show you scary. On the planet Jack Duster in the Dusty Jack Nebula, the chips cost $10 a portion, and they don't even come in newspaper. Together they walked away. New adventures were waiting. Doctor Who, The Feast of the Drowned, by Stephen Cole, was read by David Tennant. It was produced by Kate Thomas and is published by BBC Audiobooks.